everyone and welcome. It's really a pleasure to have the youth sitting at our table at Leverage Leadership. For me, it's about, oftentimes when we think about the youth, we think about, are their opinions worth anything? Do they have any value to contribute? And I think as the mature league, we tend to shut you down before giving you the space and the freedom to actually voice your opinion. And I think there's oftentimes a lot of wisdom to gain from the youth and how you view the world.
Hi, I'm Lexi, I'm 21 and I'm studying psychology.
I'm Tamsin, I'm 20 and I'm studying BIT Information Systems.
Hi, I'm Wandile, I'm 22 and I'm studying education.
Hi, my name is Gami and I'm 20 years old and I study accounting science.
Hi, I'm Erin, I'm 23. I studied graphic design, but now I'm working at Gill Studios and I'm part of Leverage's marketing team.
Nice, welcome team. And so, I often wonder about how the youth view the world, which I've said earlier, and I think to myself, do you find yourself looking at the mature league and thinking, what the F, right? How did we land in this mess? And I'd like to hear your opinion. So I'm just going to start off with a general question, and whoever wants to answer, go for it, and we can have a conversation. So who are the leaders you don't admire and why?
So the leaders we don't admire as the youth.
As a youth, yeah.
From the youth perspective.
Yeah.
I'll generally say just the people running this country. I don't want to get into specifics, but we kind of know who that is. And I just feel like they really set a bad example and they've left the youth, which is us, because a lot of them are very old. They've left us with a lot to clean up at some point. It's not happening now, but it's going to happen soon. And we're not going to be the youth anymore, and we're going to be in their positions. So I genuinely feel like if there's leaders I do not look up to, it's not one specific person, it's an entire organization. So I would say those are the leaders I don't necessarily look up to.
Okay, so for you, it's about the fact that they've left a mess behind in this country that you need to mop up.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, do you?
I agree with what he was saying about them being very old. I think for me, what I find very difficult is I think there's a very big disconnect between a lot of leaders and the youth, because if you look in any country, they're like 70-something years old, all of them, or 80 or whatever else. And I do understand there's the aspect of like they've had years of experience. But the youth are essentially the future of every nation. And there's a big disconnect when you're, no offense to the elderly, 80 years old and you're running a country that's majority the youth. They kind of don't understand how to act best in our best interests. Yeah.
Do you, any other opinion about? Go for it.
I think with each generation, there comes this level of entitlement. And I think it's important for everyone to have their own ideas. They are entitled to their own opinions. But the older generation has this sense of entitlement and the younger generation has this sense of entitlement. And they don't ever mix. It's always like conflicting views, conflicting ideas. And I think it's the whole entitlement thing that also we just don't agree with.
That disconnect. Because I also think they're always pounding this idea, which does, I think, put a lot of pressure on us of you're the future of the country, you're the future of the world. When, like he said, you've left us, we don't have any resources to be the future of the country, but also we never get asked, like, what would make it easier for you? What ideas do you have for the future of the country? But the pressure's placed on us to be the future of the country, but we never asked, how would it work for us? Like, how could it be made better for us? So I think there's just a really big disconnect.
Okay, Tamsin?
I agree. I think there's a lack of cooperation between the two generations where if we take tips and tricks from each generation to help each other better a certain situation or a country, we wouldn't feel as if the one generation has left us with a mess and the next other generation has to clean up after them, like Wandile said. I think learning from each other would be the biggest thing that we are lacking.
Okay.
I think it's kind of weird though. You say like the global leaders of the world, they're all like 70, 80 years old. Why isn't it that we have like 40, like the millennials in leadership positions? Because they've experienced enough life.
Yes, I agree.
They know, and I feel like we could learn from them because they were in our position not too long ago. I wish maybe that could happen instead of having a generation even before them, before our parents, our grandparents' generation being the leaders.
Yes, that makes sense. Because then they're halfway like where we are and halfway where the older generation is, if that makes sense.
Okay, so but here's my question, because you're talking about, and I know I asked you who are the leaders you don't admire and why. But let's not keep it exclusively to age, because we could have leaders that are 90 years old that have the correct leadership qualities and intention. So we've discussed that there's a disconnect, and I understand and I agree with you. There is that disconnect between perhaps the older leaders and what the need is for the youth today, that you've been left with this mess. And I think globally a lot of youth have been left with a mess to mop up. I mean, we can see there's disconnect in many, many countries. But what is lacking besides that age disconnect? What else is lacking if you think of the leaders that you don't admire? And I'm sure, I'm being preemptive, but I'm sure that there are leaders outside of this country that you don't admire. So what are they lacking?
Honestly, I believe it's like transparency. So a lot of decisions are being made and they're not really discussing why these decisions are being made and what led them to making these decisions. So now, as the community, we left in the dark. We don't know what's going on. I think if they're more transparent, and it would help a lot in us respecting the leadership and looking up to them more.
Yes.
I would say we've also lost a bit of perspective on what we're trying to do when we step into those leadership roles. When you step into a certain role, you're responsible of the people below you or whatever you've put in charge of. And I think a lot of our leaders are mainly focused on bettering themselves or their own agendas instead of bettering the community or helping the economy or anything like that. So I think it's just a lack of perspective.
Yeah, I agree with Towson. I think it's also, I don't feel like, maybe what I would say is lacking is like passion for the actual role of a leader. I think most world leaders, and I'll give my example, I don't admire him at all, is Donald Trump. I think a lot of what he does is very driven by ego, and he's in the position he's in to gain power, to gain admiration, to gain success, instead of, I'm passionate about being a leader, I'm passionate about my country, I'm passionate about my people, I want to help them. So I think it's the same as the losing perspective, getting into it for the wrong reasons. And I think this is a really I think this has been going on for decades and decades, is people are entering those positions of power for the wrong reasons, and they're lacking the passion and the actual motivation to do what the role actually expects of you and what leadership actually is. Yeah.
If I could be honest, I actually do believe he's passionate about his role. Don't get me wrong. I do look down on him. I don't think he's a great leader, but I think he's passionate about his people. I think he's trying to do the best for his people.
Okay.
At the expense of the rest of the world.
At the expense of the rest
But
of the
I
world.
feel like specifically with him as a leader, he's passionate up to a point.
Yes.
I think that's kind of how we all are. We have these ideas, but he's supportive of those who support his agendas, what they want. But it's like, what about the rest of the people? If you're supposed to be in charge of a whole country and not everyone thinks the same, then how can you just look after those who support what you support and then disregard what anyone else thinks? I don't think that's being a leader at all.
That's very similar to what I was going to say. So I agree, that guy's very passionate. You can see it when he speaks. But I think the key word there was he's passionate about his people,
his agenda.
his Trumpies and their hats and like the people that follow him. The majority of the nation he's not passionate about. And that's again why I say, like, you're entering that position to protect the country and move the country forward and move all the people of the country forward, not just your people. So I do agree, but then I kind of
Yeah, but
disagree
I
at the
think-
same time.
I think it's also just him being close-minded.
Yes,
Because
very.
in this day and age, realistically, you need to have an open mind. You need to be accepting of a lot more things.
Yes.
Maybe it is going back to the generation thing, him coming from a previous generation, where certain things like the conservative standpoint was a lot more popular back then. Maybe because now he's a leader, it's 2025, he still thinks like when he was our age.
Yeah.
He's just a lot more close-minded.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I
It's
think
not inclusive.
Yes.
I think right now we need someone that's a lot more inclusive.
Yes.
Mm.
Because a lot of things have become a lot more acceptable now than they were.
Yeah. I think he's very regressive in his
Yeah.
mindset, definitely. He wants but it's not just, oh, like I believe things should be that way. Like he's actively trying to ensure that things kind of go back to the way that they were with a lot of like the legislation that he's proposing and a lot of his beliefs. And I think a big problem with that is he's not just some guy on the street that like has a horrible rhetoric about people. He's a president, so everyone hears what he says and what he does. So again, it's that lack of like inclusivity and actually wanting to do something for everyone that you represent instead of just the select few.
And if he was, or if we're saying that the voice of the youth matters, and we're saying all these ideas and we're accepting of all these new things coming in, then why, as a president or a leader, is he going back on what the youth is saying? We want this. And he's saying, no, let's go back. Guess what? He's going to die eventually one day. And then it's going to be stuck with this country of this old belief system.
Yeah.
The youth is still not being heard. And then you still have to clean up the entire mess because it's not how we want it to be. And then you have to keep on building it. And do you really win?
Yeah.
So here's my comment. So I suppose you would all agree then he's leading through fear and control.
Yes.
But don't you think that sometimes leadership requires, and I'm not saying him, I'm just saying, don't you think sometimes leadership requires a little bit of fear? And when I talk about fear, I don't mean, like a strong, forceful fear, but at the end of the day, the leader needs to be in control and not your friend. Right? It's like your parents. Your parents can't be your friends. We need to respect them, So, like, where does that fear end? And should we have a bit of fear? And I'm using that term very broadly. And should control not be part of the leader's role?
I do feel that fear is a necessity when it comes to leading, as there needs to be a sort of reward and punishment system. If someone does not follow our certain rules or does something illegal, or there needs to be repercussions for your actions because you affect other people. So to sort of keep people not in line, but sort of in line to sort of prevent others' actions from jeopardizing or hurting other people. So that's where I think punishment or fear is a necessity, as well as reward. So if you are doing something good for the society or people, you are rewarded in a certain sense, maybe in terms of getting a certain leadership position and helping people do better for each other.
So maybe we can change the word fear, because I used it specifically in its negative term. So maybe we should change the word fear to rather equate to respect, right? To generating natural, automatic respect. In other words, that we kind of award people based on their input and not based on their connections. So what is your opinion about that?
To be honest, times and that, fear is a necessity, but you're right. That fear should be gained through respect. Like you said, one thing I've realized about society in general, obviously this current society that we live in, is a lot of people that get to those positions, like you said, get there through their connections, which is very unfair. It is very unfair because there are a lot of people, I feel like we're drowning out the pool of potentials that could have been.
Absolutely.
Only because certain people have connections to get up there. There's so many people out there who have a passion for, just helping people. And I know necessarily those are not always the best leaders, but, that's a respectable person. And I feel like in a lot of our world leaders today, or in a lot of leaders in general, that role, people are losing that respectable factor about them, where it's like, what do you stand for? What are your morals? And, what are you trying to achieve? And is it going to help, the better part of society, as opposed to what's happening now, where we're all pushing against each other because we all have our different ideas and we all just want to clash all the time instead of trying to include everybody like we spoke about before. So that's the direction I think the world is taking right now. And like I said, at some point, which is not now, because the millennials are only getting into power now. And at some point, we're going to have to be the ones that clean up that mess. Or I don't even want to call it a mess, but yeah, we're going to be the ones that have to deal with the consequences of, our predecessors, which is a very big thing that nobody's thinking about at the moment, but we're going to get there.
Yes.
And that's just my view on, the word leadership in the world currently right now.
So I just want to clarify and conclude, like genuine, authentic leadership is not about fear. It's about providing a framework within which we willingly adhere to and align to, right? But that framework, how we message that, certainly needs a certain level of confidence and assertion that we respect and naturally gravitate towards. So it's not really about the fear, but there's that element of legitimate authority. And I think when we communicate incorrectly, when we become forceful, then that fear comes in. I mean, you can think of many dictators in the past that have used fear as a means to control their countries. So I guess my next question would be, do you think that the leaders who are a bit more forceful are forceful because they themselves fear?
So I think that is a really good point. I think of like a similar example, just because it's what I'm busy studying right now, of like a narcissist is overly like confident and boastful and wants to be the center of attention, but actually they have a really fragile ego. But that's why they act the way that they do to counteract that. So I think if we look at examples of leaders who are like very tyrannical and use violence or aggression or really like oppressive laws to get what they want, it's actually coming from a place of fear and a place of fragility, because they know they can be taken out of that position very, very quickly. So that's like, that analogy makes sense. He lost the last election, so he's aware of the fact that his position of power is not permanent, which is why I think he does what he does to make sure that he can stay there. And also because he's already now served 2 terms technically, he can't run for president again. So I think he's trying to push out as much of his agenda as possible, very aggressively, very forcefully, so that when he doesn't have that position anymore, which he won't, and I think he's fearful of that, at least he's kind of set in place what he wanted to set in place before it's too late, if that makes sense. And I think you can see he's come across in this presidency already a lot more aggressively than in his previous one, because he lost the previous election. Like, he only has so much time to do what he needs to do. I don't know if that makes any sense.
It does. So can I stir the pot a bit?
Yes.
And I'd like individual opinions here. So there cannot be a I don't know answer.
Are you going to point?
Okay, I'm going to absolutely point. Who do you think would make better leaders, men or women? Come in.
It's okay, be honest.
Okay.
You only say
And so I'm asking you, who do you think, which, and why?
And why? Hey, so I think it's going to be men. Maybe like... Okay, enough of me.
Don't worry, you're not sitting with 4 women. It's okay.
Yeah, fine.
Oh, no, I'm neutral here. So I'm not
Is he
contributing
neutral?
because I'm not the youth.
I think just naturally, men are more assertive. And again, we did say fear. I know we said ended up saying respect. I think men are more likely to look for the respect. And traditionally, men have taken that role of leadership in the past, if that makes sense.
Okay.
And that's why we're in the mess.
Yeah. Obviously, if we look at like New Zealand, they had a female president and they were thriving.
Exactly.
She did a
So-
great job.
She did. And that tops her.
No, Tamsin, go for it.
So I would do the opposite. I would say females would make a better leader. I think, yes, men do tend to be more assertive, but I think so can females. But accompanied with that, they are very also compassionate and they care about people and they have that more nurturing nature to want to look after people, which I think we've lost a little bit in terms of when I'm going back to the perspective that we forgetting that your role as a leader is to look after and help the people below you. And also I feel that women have been waiting for this opportunity for a very long time. And throughout these generations and decades, we've been taking notes and we've been saying, oh, we can better this, we can do that, we can. And so I think give us a shot and let us try. See what we can do.
To be honest, I think, genuinely, in a perfect world, our world is very imperfect. In a perfect world, it would be nice to say, women could be the leaders globally. And I'm not saying they cannot. I'm not saying they can't. I'm just saying in the current imperfect world that we live in, that is driven by, ego, like we said earlier, men do step into that position better. For now, I'm not saying that's a forever thing. I'm just saying in the current world we live in, that is run by men.
Because of their ego, because you mentioned ego.
Egos, it plays a part in it. Like Gami said, men have a tendency to chase respect, like we also spoke about earlier. Sometimes we do that through fear, but men have this natural, I want respect and I want it now mentality, as opposed to, a woman can have that mentality, but, a woman, like Tamsin said as well, are more nurturing, and that's a factor that we are losing in today's current leadership. So in a perfect world, I do think, women, I was raised by a single mother, so I do think women are great leaders. I just think right now, it would be very difficult. It would be very difficult. We also spoke about New Zealand earlier. New Zealand had a female president or prime minister, one of the two. She did a very great job. She did a very good job. But now when we're talking about...
You're trying to not step on
I'm
anyone's toes.
really trying not to... I'm really...
Men and women are.
But I'm just saying, and obviously we'll never know. I guess we'll never know what this question will about to ask, but if you put her in, I'm not saying, is New Zealand a first world country? If you put her, is it? Okay, they're first world country. If you put her in a different scenario, she's running, let her run, let's say she runs, a top economy in the world. I'm talking about a powerhouse. We're talking, the UK, China, India, the United States. I think in those countries specifically, because they do run so much of the world economy, I think that's a men-based sport right now, currently, because of just how, power-driven all those nations are, and they're currently being run by men as well. There was also another country, I think Tanzania. They had was it Tanzania? Tanzania, I'm going to stick with it.
Let me also say, don't you think maybe that the president of New Zealand did such a good job because the foundation was already laid by a man? So maybe the male leaders were also just as good as her, because New Zealand's been a first world country for a long time.
Oh, but that's true.
It has been a first world country. The economy has been thriving for quite a while.
But that's where we take it back, because we spoke about how they are leaders that are competent, and they are leaders that, really do want to see their nation succeed. They want to see their people succeed. So Kami could be right. There could have been the right foundations laid by a leader before, and then she became a great leader. Not because of him, but because they did things the right way. So that collaboration, I think collaboration is necessary. Let's go there. Collaboration.
I think she's a good example.
Yes, I think
She's a really good example that females could be good.
Yes, she's
So all I want to say is you can have a beautiful home and burn it down. Hey?
Yeah.
So that foundation can be there.
yeah,
But for you to continue,
exactly.
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
I think she not only did she maintain the foundation that was laid for her, she improved it and showed people what women can do when they're given the opportunity.
Lexi?
I'm worried. I don't want to take up everyone's time. I just think on this topic of men have always stepped into that power and men naturally do it. I think we're forgetting, for me, what seems very obvious. Women have never been given the opportunity to do so. So I don't know if I understand that that's true, but it's not like there have been times where there was a position and they were like, you have a 50% chance of getting it. You have a 50% chance of getting it. And then the man was like, I want it. And the woman was like, no, I don't. Because I feel like that's the way we're speaking, is as if men historically run into those positions and women historically shy away from them. I think it's more an opportunity thing, is women have never been given the opportunity to do so. And then on the assertiveness thing, because I think actually women have a lot more variety when it comes to nurturing versus assertiveness. It's kind of that duality of women. There's that saying that women are like the ocean. It can kill you, but it's also it sustains life, that type of thing. And I think when we come to the assertiveness, women have never once again been given the opportunity to be assertive. You can say all you want, we want an assertive female leader. But if you think the most recent US presidential campaign, Kamala was assertive and she was arrogant, she was selfish, she was this, she was that. When a man does the same thing, he's a good leader and he's a strong leader and he's assertive. And I can think about myself, because we all know at this table I'm an assertive woman. I don't know if I'm allowed to swear, but I've been called a bitch by many people over the years for doing something as simple as don't talk to me like that, or I don't want to be spoken to like that, or please don't touch me like that, or please don't do that to me. And I'm a bad person. But I'm giving you the assertiveness that you allegedly want from women and women leaders. But when they give it, they're arrogant and they're selfish and they're not good leaders and whatever else. When a man does it, it's a great thing. So I think actually women have the potential to both be assertive and have that nurturing quality that I think a lot of male leaders lack, which I think is what we need. Like Tamsin said, you need to nurture the people that you're caring for as a leader. It's not just about oh, I want to protect them and I want to boost the economy and I want to do that. You have to actually care for the people. So I think women actually have the potential to bring both of those domains in at once. And just one more point that I do want to make is I think, let me just say in a South African context specifically, I think we could really benefit from a female leader. Mm-hmm. And I'm saying this, maybe I'm biased. I think naturally, without even trying to be biased, we're all going to be a little bit biased in this conversation. If I think we have a huge gender-based violence and femicide problem, and nothing has been done about that. We've heard so many promises of no more bail for people who murder women and no more bail for people who do this to children, and they're getting out on 500 Rand, 800 Rand, 1,000 Rand bail. I think having a woman in power, I'd like to believe that there would be a bit more care and consideration for something that's taking out hundreds of women a week, even a day, from this country. And there are certain issues that I think men tend to look straight past. Whereas for me, something obviously there are other issues in this country, poverty, lack of education, unemployment. But that for me is a very big issue that this country is facing. And something like that I don't think will ever be addressed by male leaders. So if I'm going to apply to a practical real life example, that's where I think a female leader could really boost this country.
Nice. Aaron.
Oh, I don't know if there's anything left to say. All you guys are taking all my points and I was like, damn. Who do I think would make a better leader? I'm going to have to go with woman. That is going to be my point. The interesting thing that I find is when men tend to disagree on certain topics, I would like to take it back to, but who set that system up, And I think that with the whole thing that we're saying, women being nurturing, considering, yes, I also believe that women can be powerful and assertive. It's always just taken off as a woman being a bitch or a woman doing this, because it's not her role, it's not her place. So women actually haven't given the space to say that it's also your role to be able to lead. If you think of why are women biologically mothers, what do they bring to the table? How do they think? How do they care for a child? And also biologically, women have bigger prefrontal cortexes. Just needed to throw that in. And I think the way that women think, and this was a conversation we had the other day, when a woman has a child, for example, a man, the woman, and a child's going to go to the beach. The man is going to say, cool, got the keys, getting in the car, I'm going to drive us to the beach. What's the woman going to do? Okay, I'm going to pack the bag. I'm going to bring in extra clothes. I'm going to bring in sunblock. I'm going to bring sandwiches. I'm going to bring A, B, and C in case any of these situations happen, even if it doesn't, because that's how women think. And I do think that the way that we think has been disregarded, and we just haven't been able to give that role. I think that a lot of the situations nowadays, I'm not blaming it on men. I also do like men, so just putting it out there. I'm single. I'm kidding. Insert your credit card details in the comments below. I do think that men are also incredible, but a lot of how the leadership roles and all the issues that has taken place has been done from a man's stance. Men want to say, yeah, but women are so emotional. They would start 3 wars. Okay, all the wars have been started by men.
Have you seen a man when his football team loses?
Exactly. He
That's
goes
emotion.
crazy.
That's emotion.
And men naturally suppress their emotions. There's nothing wrong with that as a leader. But a leader should lead and not be controlling and not suppress things. Women will feel their emotions, but they still have those sorts of energy to say, I know better than this or that. Mm-hmm. All the other situations when you've spoken about what is that word? Woman. GBV. GBV. When you think of GBV or any of the issues, who's at the marches, who's the one showing up, it's women. They care about a lot of different issues. Mm-hmm. So I feel like they would be able to hear what the public is saying and to be able to take that energy and say, this is what needs to be done. Mm-hmm. But women can also stand in power and say, this is for the better of the country. This is how we're also going to make money. And not just sit in the corner and say, how do you feel? How do you feel? Yeah. No, yes, let's take that into consideration, but still have power to say, I can do this, this, and that for the country. Yeah. And that's why I think women would be better leaders.
Okay, so to conclude, and before I ask my final question, is it, and I know I'm the one who asked the question, I just want to stimulate conversation, but is leadership about being male or female? Or is it really about the qualities that you possess? And to your earlier point, Tamsin, your passion, your intention, and the impact that you want to leave behind, is it a male-female issue then? Right? And that's what we need to open ourselves up to. So that's the one thing. And then I think, again, I'm going to ask individually just to wrap up, is if you had to think of 3 qualities that for you really encapsulate a good leader. Mm-hmm. And when we talk about a good leader, it's about servant leadership, leading with impact, and for the right reason, to be a direction setter, to kind of be the change agent, for the greatest good of all. What are the 3 qualities that kind of encapsulate a good leader for you, Kami?
For me, I'll probably say integrity, respect, obviously, and then a sense of responsibility. Yeah. Out of all the role models I've looked up to, that being teachers, headmasters, even in school, the prefects, head boys, I want to be like them. You always strive to be like them or better. And I would think that they have the integrity, honor, even to add to the other 3. They respect everyone below them. That's what I would look for.
Okay. All right. Nice. Thank you. Tamsin?
I would say be caring, considerate of other people, and responsible with the power that you've been given.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, the position you put in, there's a lot of responsibilities that come with it. And to be able to take that power and use it for good by caring for others and having compassion for others is something that is important to me.
Okay, thank you. Lexi?
I think for me, I've been hammering on about a passion because I think you can see in everything in life when someone's doing something that they don't want to be doing, because it plays off in like the quality of your work, the quality of your effort, the quality of like the impact that your efforts are having. So I think passion, again, you must be getting into it for the right reasons. You must have a passion for the role, a passion for the responsibilities, a passion for the people, a passion for your team or your country or whoever it is that you're leading. So that for me is really, really important. And I think empathy, and I think I'd put with that like respect. Like obviously you are a leader, so this sounds horrible, but you're like a bit above maybe the people that you're leading, but to still see yourself as, in a sense, they're equal, and to see them as equal human beings to you, and just to have empathy because things happen and people make mistakes. And then building on that, then my third quality would be assertiveness. So, okay, have the empathy, people make mistakes, be kind, be caring, be considerate. But when the time comes, you draw the line and you have assertiveness to say, okay, I hear you, I respect that, or I know what you're going through and I understand this is what you need, but this is what I'm saying. So kind of striking a balance between those two. I think it's again that same thing of like the duality of like care and nurturing and empathy, and then being able to be assertive and when the time comes, like put your foot down.
So
yeah,
maybe balancing heart and mind.
Yes, I think that says it really nice.
All right. Erin?
Yeah, number one, open-mindedness. I think that someone's issue might not be yours, but it's also having that level of understanding, to be open-minded, to hear someone else's perspective, point of view, issues, and to be able to take it on and not say it's black and white. Yeah. There's a lot of gray areas. I do think, I don't know if there's already a trait you can have, but like a leader, I think should have purpose. Mm-hmm. They should have purpose in what they do, purpose in why they do it. And I think in general, when you do have a purpose in life, your passion, you have a passion in life. You'll do anything with your heart and soul to be able to complete this. If your purpose is to be a leader, there will be no situation that will come to you that you would not be able to handle. Mm. And then the other one, it's kind of like a mix direction. I feel like it's so important for a leader to have a direction because, like I said earlier, the part of a leader is to lead others through a direction. And like you also said, have that framework. If you don't have a direction, you can be a great leader, but where's everyone going? You should be able to show them.
Yeah. Nice. So I have a question that, typically is asked to the very young kids.
Oh.
So if you became president tomorrow, what is the one or the first thing that you would change in this country? Let's come back to South Africa. What is the first thing? Rule, enforcement, positive change, that, and forget what your restrictions or limitations or monetary constraints could be, right? If you could change one thing, what would it be? Kami?
Oh no, Viniso.
Okay, let's start with you. Wandile?
If there was the first thing I'd change if I was
one thing.
If I was president of this country. I think it would have to be, you know how in South Africa it would have to be, for me, directed towards like poverty in this country. So basically the way I go about this is, you know how South Africans receive the SASSA grant, obviously the, underprivileged in society receive the SASSA grant. I'd take that away, but like bear with me. I'll take that away because I feel like we need to start investing in, people's minds, people's, we need to start ignite, like as a leader, I'd want to ignite like a fire in the people that are, underprivileged to, make a way for themselves, but not in, that's not me saying I completely abandon them, but that'll be me, like, you know, trying to empower them, you know, like create workshops for these people so that you don't necessarily, you build up skills to earn your own money as opposed to you getting money for free, because some people really just freeload over that money, and really the money doesn't go where it's supposed to go. It doesn't go for the betterment of themselves, for the betterment of the people around them. Some people it goes to their detriment, and you know, there are people out there who actually use it the way they should. But I just feel like the best thing you can do as a leader is invest in the people of your nation. So that would be my investment to society, you know, to try teach people to be critical thinkers, and to try get them out of that box of, oh, I'm going to need this grant my entire life. I rely on this grant. At the end of every month, this grant is paying my bills. Like, you know, you need to try and improve the mindset of your people in order to, you know, push your nation forward, push your group of people forward. Yeah, so that's what I would do.
That's what you would do.
Samson?
It's not really one thing. I think I would just make a completely blank slate, scratch everything that we've ever done, that we've ever thought of in the past, because I feel that corruption is a huge thing, and even something as small as maybe potholes is all our money that we are dedicating to potholes being used as efficiently and effectively as it should. Is it maybe not some of it going somewhere else and then they declaring it as potholes, but it's actually not. So start from scratch and then build up again from there. Cooperate with certain leaders within the country that have shown that they can help the country because they have a passion for it and they want to help better the country that we live in. So just start from scratch and cooperate with whoever is in charge of this country.
That's so good. Nice. Lexi, you want to...
I would get rid of taxes. No, I'm just saying that because I just got a new job and I have to pay taxes for the first time. I'm just joking. So I think if I could do one thing in one day, like you said, there's no limitations or restrictions, so I'm assuming I would have billions of rands and I can do whatever I want to do. It kind of touches on what Kaya said about getting people to do things for themselves and build their lives for themselves and take it upon themselves to like improve their situation rather than relying on other people or grants or other things. And while I do agree with that, I think people can only do that to a certain extent. Obviously, if someone really wants it, they can walk 2 hours to university and use the university computer until whatever time, but you still need to get to that point. So it's very easy to say, oh, well, homeless people should just try get a job, they should just apply here, they should just apply there. But if I'm homeless and I haven't showered in 3 weeks and I don't have proper clothes to wear, no one's going to hire me realistically, unfortunately. So I think I would just build like a lot of houses, because at the very least to give people electricity, Wi-Fi to make, because we do have the benefit of Wi-Fi, maybe an online job interview if it's something, if they don't have transport to go there physically, running water, a fridge full of food, electricity. I think just to take that extra step of, okay, they must still do it for themselves, people must still do things for themselves, but at least they can do it with food in their stomachs and they've showered and they're clean and they have more of a chance of getting those jobs.
Yeah. So that's Maslow's hierarchy of needs,
Yes.
right? The first tier.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Erin?
Okay, I'm going to go into a different direction. So, if I was the president, I definitely think that it would be to encourage celebrating what the African continent, or South Africa specifically, has to offer. Mm-hmm. I feel like, and this is for digital nomads, get out of Cape Town. I think that our country has so much to offer. We have so much talent. We have a lot of skills. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that needs to be celebrated. That needs to be better emphasized. Thank you so much. Emphasized. And I do feel like we need to build up our country. The same thing with the corruption, the same thing with the grants, the same thing with the handing out and all of that stuff, is that because we are a third world country, we just take from all these other countries. We owe how many countries all that money, and where does it go to? It doesn't actually go to our country, but it goes to the ones that are in charge. Mm-hmm. And I feel like if we had no corruption, which would be great, and that money was actually put into our country, and then also not handing out, and just saying that what we have to offer is artists and accountants and doctors and people that are so intellectual, have a lot to say. We are so powerful as a country. It's just not celebrated enough. It's not shown enough. We're so, yes, let's take in international people. Let's talk to digital nomads. They can just move in. We'll make it harder for people to live in Cape Town, for example. It shouldn't be about that. It should be about uplifting African citizens. That's what I think I would do.
Just saying, I think the positives are really overshadowed by the negatives on each other, which I think maybe we've done a little bit, but like I do get what you're saying.
For me, this was a very valuable conversation, and I think it's something that we can talk about ad infinitum, right? Because there's so much that we need from our current leaders in this country and globally. But I do think, your opinions are valid, and I hope to see all of you in leadership positions, that you can perhaps take this mess and redirect it and transmute it into something wonderful wherever you may go.